All right. So anyway, so we're getting started on our presentation of our trip to Bolivia. I think most of you know us, but I'll introduce Dale Mowry and Mac Finney. Mac Finney. I know them by their first names, so. And obviously Alex Muir. And we went down to Bolivia, and we're going to tell about our trip. So anyway, let's first pray. Lord, thank you for this day, and thank you for all your many mercies. Thank you for the trip you had us take, and thank you for being with the Quechua down there, and thank you that you would just continue this ministry and bring honor and glory to your name. We love you very much. In Jesus' name, amen. So, there we go. Okay, so the mountains where the Quechua live. So, Bolivia is a very, very mountainous country, part of it. And then the other part's in the plains. So the Quechua live up in the mountains, and they are one of about 36 or 37 indigenous tribes with their own language. So that's on top of Spanish. So Spanish is like kind of the main language, but there's all sorts of native people that speak their own language. So the Quechua in the mountains, roughly, say, 4 million people. And then there's other Quechua in the cities that mostly speak Spanish. And they are about another 2 or 3 million. So they are by far the largest people group in a country of 11, 12, 13 million people of Bolivia. So that means that we're, reaching quite a few of the Bolivians. So these are just different pictures of the mountains, just to give you an idea of what it's like. Well, we'll try that. Stop. There it goes. Okay, just getting used to this. So anyway, that was a big bridge over a huge river valley. So
that bridge.
Can you speak into the mic?
This bridge took about 3 years to build. It's likely 250 feet from the deck of that bridge down to the river below. It's a great bridge for bungee jumping, The reason for this bridge is that when you came along the road, there were 19 switchbacks. A switchback is where the road switches 180 degrees. So you're going this way and the road switches right around, you're going the other way. There were 19 switchbacks to go down into the valley. You crossed a little wooden bridge, and there were 21 switchbacks to get back up on the other side. So this bridge joins the two, and the bridge actually has a bend in it. When you come on, it bends, and to go off, it's quite an amazing accomplishment. Every time we would go through for the 3 years, we'd see them building those columns up, and then they started to build the deck of the bridge, and it was like the wind's going to blow that thing over. It just looks so precarious standing up there, but it works good. So.
So, okay, this was early in the morning. The sun this is probably about 40 minutes before the sun comes up down there, and it just starts getting pink, and then brighter and brighter, and then finally the sun comes up. So, somewhere here, there's the switchbacks that Alex was talking about. So you just go up one mountain, down the other, and
I had 2 engineers on a team one time, and we were standing looking over the landscape, and we saw these switchbacks. And so the 2 engineers were beside me, and I said, "Which one of you guys designed this road?" And the other fellow said, "Well, he heard a story one time that the reason the roads are like this is that somebody lost a donkey." And so they tracked the donkey till they found him, and so wherever the donkey went, that's how they made the road. So I think there's some comparisons in places of New Brunswick too, where the donkey got loose.
Hey, Dale, how many, remember you were counting one time.
Yeah, I remember one of the times growing up, I was traveling with Alex, and so we went up, and at night it was quite dusk. When we went up, I couldn't see too good, but we came down the next morning, and I started counting the switchbacks, Alex and I, and with 36 switchbacks coming down that mountain. And there was a time I would never want to see that. I used to be so terrified, and but the Lord brought me through it. I've been there 10 times, and I only was going once and never going again in my life. But the Lord had to call me back. And when he called me back for the second trip, I've been there 10 times now, and I praise God for it. He was great.
Mm-hmm. That's one of your pictures, Dale. It's just...
I had to tell you a little story about this. It's kind of a funny little story, but it was early in the morning when I got up. I took that picture early in the morning, too. The sun had come up, and this was a really rocky place, wasn't it? It was just a barren piece of ground,
Yeah.
and there's rocks everywhere. So anyways, I had to go to the baño. So the baño is a toilet out there, and you can see there's none, you don't find any just setting anywhere. There's none of these little porta potties nowhere, nothing like that. So anyways, I went out early in the morning, and then I had to go in quite a rush. So I went behind that rock. I said, nobody will see me there. So anyways, I was there, and I was behind it, just looking amazing and looking to beauty around that. And then I just was ready to do my business, and I looked, and a lady was coming with a jug of water on her shoulder and a dog, and she said, "Buenos dias," and I said, "Buenos dias," and she walked on by. So just a minute or two later, when I was just finishing up, I heard somebody say, "Dale," and I looked, and it was Felipe, another Quechua missionary, a great guy, and I've known him for years, and he was just around the other side of the rock from me. So I took a picture of that rock for my memory. Anyways, it was quite an episode.
The rock walls, instead of having fence wire down there, there's just miles and miles of rock walls just to keep the animals in. There. That's one of the vehicles. There's our caravan. So, all right. So, the animals, llamas are quite prevalent down there. They grow them for meat, and along with sheep. So you'll see sheep and llamas on the mountainside quite a lot. So there's something. Can't see what that was. No, it was. Yeah, it must be more llamas. It's just hard to see. Another one. Yeah. So sometimes you have to wait on the road because the animals are going home too. So. Okay, so can you get the mic there?
So lots of times people will wonder why we take radios. And the radio, the whole concept of the radios began several years ago, back in, I think, 1987. Because of the isolation of where these people live, many of the places are just prohibitive as far as North American missionaries or people getting there. It's just, they're so isolated, there's no roads, and the only way to get in is to walk. And for most of us, walking is almost, in these areas, is just about out of the question. So radio was the concept that came up, is that's the way we're going to reach these people with the gospel. And so in 1987, the concept started that they were going to try and get a radio station, and all of the programming would be done in the Quechua language. So it was very centrally focused on the Quechua people, and it was going to be able to reach all of Bolivia. So during the time, it took 12 years to get the radio station up and running from the time the idea was conceived. And the reason for that was that the government would change, and when you had an election and the government changed, anything that was proceeding in for approval by the government was thrown out, and you had to start all over with a new government. So in that 12 years, the government changed 5 times, which meant we had to apply 5 different times to get the station. The other side was that there are several radio stations in Bolivia, 10 or 12 radio stations, but they're all very socialistic, and even some of them had a lot of communistic views. 7 of the radio stations were controlled by the then state religion, the Roman Catholic Church. And so the thing is, when this station opportunity came, you had to bid on it. It's like a tender. So the highest bid or the best bid would get the station. And the idea behind it was, Lord, prevent somebody else from getting it, even if they're not going to use it. They're just going to have the rights to the station, and they'll block it. So the evangelical side of things, where we wanted to present the gospel, would not work. So we prayed, and during that 12 years, finally the application went through, and we were the only ones who had applied. Nobody else had applied. So that was a good answer to prayer. And the other thing was, up until then, any stations initially were granted a 2-year license. And then after 2 years, you had to renew it. And they would renew it for up to another 2 years. Well, for some odd reason, you got to understand this now, when we were granted the license, we were granted a license for 20 years. Not 2 years, 20 years. And that 20 years started in 1999. That's when the license, or when the radio went into effect, was April 12, 1999. So in 2019, it was coming up for renewal. Well, before they could apply for a renewal license, the government contacted the radio station and said, we're going to renew your license for another 10 years. But in the meantime, they're still only granting 2-year licenses to everybody else. You tell me why. Oh, that's a good answer. Right on. It's a God thing. It is. And so when somebody says to me, how long are you guys going to keep taking these radios? I said, well, the license was just renewed for 10 years, so that's a good sign we were going to be able to take them for another 10 years. Well, if you look at us, some of us might not be here in 10 years. Somebody else is going to have to do it. However, it's been an amazing thing, because some of us, one of us, gave out number 57,000. That's a lot of radios. There's a couple of them back there on the chair if you want to look at them, little red boxes. They're smaller than a drink box. But that just gives you an idea of what the progression was in order to get to the place where we could give the radios out. Now, it started in 1999. It was a great idea, but it wasn't until 2004 that we had the idea of taking radios down there. Can you imagine? I guess it was an assumption. We got a radio station, so everybody must have a radio, and therefore nobody thought about it. They're shortwave frequency. It's not an AM or an FM radio like you would have around here. It's a shortwave radio, which means the signal goes out and goes up and hits the atmosphere, and then it falls like rain. So if you're on the mountain or if you're down in the valley, you get the same signal. Whereas FM radio spikes. It goes up and back down. So in the spike zone, you get a good reception, but in the other zone, you can't get it. An AM radio goes almost horizontally. And I don't know, years ago, if you were listening to the radio in your car and you drove around behind a building, you wouldn't hear the radio because the signal can't go through buildings or through rocks. So that wasn't a good idea for mountains either. Well, the point was with the assumption, I suppose, of everybody having a radio until 2004. So that's 5 years after the radio went into production. Our son Greg and I were traveling on a very isolated road, about 15,000 feet up. We were going to visit a friend, and a man stepped out on the road in front of us, stopped us. Well, he was as surprised to see a vehicle as we were surprised to see a man. It's just, there's nothing up there. And so in the conversation, as Greg talked with him, Greg can speak the Quechua language, so they talked away, and finally he reaches in his little vest and he pulls out this red box and gave it to Greg. And they talked a bit, and I could tell there was some urgency in this conversation. This guy was quite upset. And so as we drove away, I said to Greg, what did he say? And he said, he told me this is a radio and it's broken, so he wants us to fix it. And the man's words were, fix it, it's my life. Fix it, it's my life. So when you put those words into perspective, what is it in your life or my life that we would look at and say, it's broken, so fix it, it's my life? What is that important to you and to me? And those words embedded in my mind at that point. And that's what the Lord used then to bring about this whole idea of taking radios to the Quechua. Because those people out there, they don't have a radio. And so therefore they don't even have opportunity to hear the signal that's flying around out there in the air. So to take the radios and give them out one per household was a great idea. And we had the wonderful big vision of taking 50 radios on our first trip. And then we thought, well, maybe we'll see some others, so let's move it up. And those 50 radios were going to go to 4 communities because they're just small little communities. Well, we ended up, the Lord somehow arranged that we would take 600 radios. But at $30 a piece, our original order was 300. So at $30 a piece, do the math, that's $9,000. And I checked and I didn't have near that much cash in my pockets. So, Lord, well, it's a story and a half. I won't tell you all of it today. But God provided the $9,000, and He provided $300 extra because those radios had to come from Hamilton, Ontario, where they're made, down here to New Brunswick. And so the $9,000 that was given included $300 extra to pay for the transportation. Well, God provided somebody with a transport. There's lots of transports, run between here and Ontario. And God provided a local man who said, I'll bring those radios down, it won't cost you anything. And he did. He brought those radios, he brought over 38,000 of those radios down and never charged us for those. So the story behind where we've been at now to hand out 57,000 of those radios, that's one per household. And if you count their households, there's usually 8, maybe 9 or 10 people in a household. So that's a lot of people that are able to hear the gospel in their own heart language 8 hours a day. Now they have the Bible on the radio. Digitally, they can play and they can listen to any part of the Bible in their heart language all day long. They're solar powered, they're powered by the sun. They don't need to go to the hardware store and buy batteries. The batteries are no good. Just the sun is all you need. Who provided the sun? Oh, God. You see, God's in this. God provided the fact that only one bid was put in for the radio station. God provided a 20-year license. He provided a 10-year renewal license. He provided... Anyway, Nate?
Thank you, Alex. So here are some pictures of the Quechua people. They're mostly fairly short people. And there's them in the mountains. What?
Short people, kind of like you and me.
Oh yeah. But they're kind of rugged people too. I mean, they live in a rugged area. They do all their farming by hand and donkeys. So, it wasn't. They don't get a whole lot of area up there that they can farm, but they produce their own food. Trying to make it go. There it goes. All right, and then this is, when we go there, there's Philippe and Hector and Stephania. Greg lives down there, so and then there were two girls that were there. It's like, one was there for 3 months and one was there for a year. And so the four of us came from Canada, but we have a decent-sized team down there that could go out with us. So there was 10 of us total on the team, as well as we pick up one of the local evangelists that goes around to the churches and helps out and preaches, and so this one here came with us another time, but beside Greg is Anacleto, and then Philippe and Hector are on the right side. There's that was what was his name? Victor and Philippe. So Victor was the local evangelist that came with us. So we just stop and pick him up, and he comes with us. So there's the radios all laid out in the bowls. So we give each family a bowl, a spoon, and a radio. And the radio has a pouch in it because the string on it, which is actually the antenna. So we give a pouch that has a string on it too, so you can hold it around your neck, and then it will preserve the radio a little better. And then a little bit of information. So there's a couple pamphlets too. So when we're giving out the radios, this is typically Hector at the microphone calling out the individual names of the families. So it's because one per family, they call out per name or per family, so that two people in the same family don't get a radio. It spreads them out more. And then there's also a 5 Boliviano, which would be equivalent to a Canadian dollar, donation, which goes to the radio station. And the reason for this donation is that if they give a little bit of money for something, then they'll value it more instead of just giving away the radios for nothing. So we use that or send that money off to the radio station so that to help them continue broadcasting. There it goes. So before we give out the radios, they love to sing and they love to play music. So we won't nearly have time to show all the music that but I did on my Facebook have some music and dancing that they did. But they start by, they'll sing a song and play some instruments, and these ladies were singing songs, and these ladies, and then we sing a song for them, and I was able to bring my auto harp in my suitcase, so that was a neat addition. And then very often they'll just come up to us and either put a hat on our heads or stick a scarf around our necks. So that's why we have a little bit of decoration here, because these are all handmade by the Quechua. Even like this here, it's got quite intricate little things that are sewn onto it. And so the and there's a few other things back there if you want to look at them afterwards that they've given to different ones of us. So. And there's Greg and Hector with their gifts. And that was like one of the most intricate ones that we had seen. But it literally came down to his waist, and it had all those little things sewn onto it. Sometimes this doesn't want to go, so I'm not sure why. Maybe I need to go like that there. Is that where I need to beam at? Okay. Good. So then Greg would preach, and in the Quechua language, so they'd hear a message from the gospel, and then Hector would explain the radios and how the buttons worked and everything, so that, and he has quite a funny way of explaining them. So he would explain like the volume. He would go, and then go like that, and it's like to show that one's down and one's up. So he was very. And then we would give the radios and shake their hands, and then we took some pictures of each person that gave radios. But they were very, very appreciative of. And then this man here, this was a special one because this man was blind, and you can imagine that now he can hear the word of God in his own language, which, will be very special to him.
One thing, when you have a crowd of 200 or 300 people, or more, one wonder why or how a blind man can function. Well, typically in Bolivia, if there's a blind man in the community, a small boy, maybe 10, 11, 12, 13 years of age, will become his eyes. And so wherever that man goes or whatever his needs are, that little boy will go with him and take him. And a little boy had brought this man to get his radio. He's not in the picture, but so when the presentation is done, the little boy assumes his part of leading the man back through the crowd to where he was. And it's a very amazing thing, because that little boy actually becomes the eyes of the older man. And the respect that everybody gives him is something else. It's also possible that he would have a dog. Many of the elderly ladies will have a dog. And wherever that lady goes, that dog will be with her. In fact, lots of times when an elderly lady may come up to get her radio, her dog comes with her. Well, the rest of the crowd, they're trying to shoo the dog away or throw stones at it, which is a common thing. And that dog you can throw stones at the dog. That dog will not go away from the side of that elderly lady. That is a commitment for that little dog to be with that lady. And the little boy is the same thing with. So anyway, it's just daily things that happen daily in the world of the Quechua.
So Philippe really loves children, and he loves to teach them. So that's like his part of the ministry when he comes with us. And he'll just gather all the children and bring them into the church that we're staying at, and you'll see them around him like that. And he's showing them some illustration about the gospel. And then we have this cross, and Alex will explain what it stands for.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you heard about the wordless book. And that's what this cross represents, is the wordless book. The fact that the black color, or the colors, and starting with the black, is representative of sin. And the red, of course, is the blood of Christ, which cleanses us, and that's where the white comes in. And then the yellow is the fact that we're going to live eternally with God, and it represents the streets of gold, but it's all bound by green. And green it's the symbolically of growing, and that we can grow now in our faith. This cross, the little crosses that we hand out are made by a lady down in New York State, and she gives us 600 cross pins, are little crosses with a pin on them, and you pin them on. You can see that be on your right on the Felipe's jacket. And she also makes us 2,000 bracelets, so we hand those out. Well, this cross that Felipe has was actually made by a lady in Geary, New Brunswick, a lady who has endured life with spina bifida. And so she said, oh, he needs a much bigger cross to teach his lessons. So she made this cross for us to take down and give to Felipe. So that's the significance why he's got this big cross. Well, you can see it goes from his shoulder to almost to his waist. So it is quite big. And the children, of course, can see much better than using one that's only an inch or so high. So, and he cherishes that cross. That's something that he makes sure it's flat in his briefcase when he puts it away, so nothing is curled up or anything. So.
And then Stephanie, this would be Hector's wife. They have, you can see that it's like a big mouth, and she's showing them how to brush their teeth. So that's for the children. Because a lot of the Quechua don't have very many teeth. So if they can start learning early how to take care of their teeth, they'll obviously last better. And then the girl on the right is Heidi Wheaton, and she's from New Brunswick here. She came with us, and she's been down there with Greg and Lily ministering. She's there for about a year. I think it ends in September or something. And I'm not sure what the heart represents, but
The heart is just actually, the wordless book has a chorus that goes with it to representing all the colors, you know.
okay.
And so this is a booklet that Estefania has made, and right there now, she's talking about the yellow from the wordless book, and it talks about living, you know, eternally with God. You know, the chorus is something like, you know, my heart was black with sin until the Savior came in, and his blood I know has washed me white as snow. That's a paraphrase, but that's kind of how it goes. And so Estefania has copied that into Spanish so she can teach the children. And the heart is very symbolic because, you know, that's the center of emotion, and that's what we always refer to in trusting Christ and so on, is to invite him into your heart or into your life, into the center of your being. And so basically the heart is the symbol of just about God's love and everything. So they don't have bookstores out here where they can go and buy their resources. They make them themselves. Felipe has made charts and pictures. He's drawn pictures and so on of creation and so on. And then when he goes out into a place, there's somebody, obviously there'll be somebody in a community that is they're teacher-minded, and they'll look at him and they'll say, oh, this would be so good to have this. And so what's he do? He gives it to them. And then when he goes back to the city, he makes another one or comes up with some more ideas. And so the man is, we call him the Energizer Bunny. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Energizer Bunny on advertising, but Felipe is 81 years old, and his ministry is to 6 and 7 and 8 and 10 and 12-year-old kids, and he's very, very effective. I would say I don't know of a team that he has come on where children didn't get saved. And they follow him, they talk with him all the time. So, next.
So here's the children. They received a little booklet and toothbrush and toothpaste. Now the booklet is written by somebody in New Brunswick here.
There was a lady that came on a trip. Actually, her husband is a pastor in a church in Ilderton, Ontario, just outside London. And she came on a trip, but she had written a book, and it's about the little seed that wanted to become something. And it's a tremendous, tremendous story. So she had it translated into Spanish, and when we were there, we found a place in Bolivia where she could get it produced and published. And so we ended up getting her book published for her and printed, and then we started handing that out. And we could go to the schools and show the what they call the headmaster, would be like the main teacher or the principal of the school, and we would show him or her this book, and they'd say, oh, we want to have that for our school. And if there was 200 kids in the school, they would want 200 books. And so we made sure that was, so we printed 2,000 books the first time, and then we had to do another reprint of books. And so we've got, I don't know, we must have 600 or so of these books. So now we're giving those books out when we give out the little scribbler we give the children, a pencil, an eraser, and a toothbrush and toothpaste. Our grandson actually started the idea about the toothbrush and the toothpaste, and he did up some flip charts and so on. And so now Stefania is using those materials to present hygiene for your teeth. It's been very fun. The kids like the taste of toothbrush, or no, not the toothbrush, the toothpaste. The kids really like the taste of it. And but you know, the ironic thing is we don't always figure and think straight, do we? At least I'm saying from my perspective. Because here this lady spends 15 or 20 minutes telling these children of what to eat, good fruits if you can get them, vegetables and so on, and don't eat candies, right? Candies are, you've all been through that, right? Well, then you get guys like Dale and Mac and Nate, not so much me, but we come along with bags of candy, and then here we're going around giving these kids candy, you know, a little treat, and the poor kid's, he's got a toothbrush in one hand, and you hand him candy in the other, and it's like, okay, she tells me don't eat the candy, and these guys bring the candy and give it to me. See, we just don't have enough forethought. Anyway, it's fun. It's a tug of war to try to get either one from the child, though. Don't try to take his candy.
There, so yeah, that's our breakfast. Oatmeal and the bread. Can you explain the bread? Or do one of you?
I had a Bolivian breakfast this morning.
Did you?
Peanut butter and bread.
Peanut butter and bread.
Yeah, it's like a round bread. That's what we have a lot.
And the bread is, they don't use yeast in the bread, so it's more like a flat bread. But typically we can have breakfast if we've got water and we can boil water. So we use water for the Instapacks of oatmeal, tea, coffee. The bread quite often is locally made. In most little communities, someone will make bread. That's just their job. Make 400 or 500 little pieces of bread each day, and so they'll bring us bread. We have peanut butter. We take both smooth and crunchy because, you know, some people are more particular what kind of peanut butter they have. Yeah, so, and we have, yeah, that's,
And Alex makes sure that somebody brings some peanut butter down from Canada because it's very expensive down there. So, you know, your suitcase, he'll be giving out things to take in your suitcase. And so there's like, you know, some hats and scarves and things like that. Because it's a cold climate up there, especially because 13,000 feet, you know, it's cold in the mornings. But anyway, so, and at least a couple of jars of peanut butter to last the trip, so. And then the Quechuas give us the lunch afterwards, and so that's usually, you know, potatoes and rice, and then a piece of meat and some salad once in a while. Now this particular one had an egg that was sort of like half scrambled and half fried, and that was good too. There's Mac with his. This was another day, and then those are, you know,
a deep fried pastry. It's like almost like a biscuit mix, and they stretch it out and drop it into the hot grease. It's called buñuelo, and it's really something that Tim Hortons should put together here. If they did, they would likely expand their business double. It's a very popular thing. They make it, and they call it buñuelo and api. And the drink that they make is a corn drink. It's a little bit thick, but it's quite a hot drink. And there are places around the edge of the city where the Quechua people will make buñuelo and api, and a lady will be out at the edge of the street just selling buñuelo and api, and people will go there. I mean, like people here, they line up at Tim Hortons. They'll be lined up there, not in a drive-through, but they're, you know, but they'll be lined up to get the buñuelo. And so we had, I think maybe we had two opportunities where they brought us buñuelo, and it's a little greasy, but
it was good.
It's good, yeah.
Only one a day.
One a day, yeah, that's right.
One common gift of food is potatoes. They'll just boil or bake potatoes, and then that is a type of potato, right? That's on top.
Yeah, those small little yellow things, they're type of sweet potato. And in Bolivia, they have over 200 varieties of potatoes. Carlton County does not have that many. Sorry. Potatoes actually originated in Cusco, Peru. That's where the first potatoes were. And so Peru and Bolivia are all kinds of varieties, but those are those little yellow ones. They could be any one. They can be purple. They can be mottled, like a variegated. That's the word you use in wool, isn't it? Variegated wool that has all colors. Anyway, the potato will have different colors, but they're really nice. They're sweet little potato. You can see they're kind of red potatoes. They're more like our potatoes, a lot smaller than ours, but they have red ones, they have blue ones, and purple ones, and even white ones. So, but the little sweet potatoes are quite attractive.
Okay, so now this is after the trip giving out radios. Then we came back and we were in Sucre for a couple days, and then we went to Ravello with the Compassion Project. And this is often the churches will have something in the front of them, like this is the Church of Eternal Life. It's partway down, it says Iglesia Vida Eterna. So, Isaac knows all about that. But anyway, so this church was started by Adelia, and You want to give a little?
Adelia is, well, she with the Lord now, but several years ago, this young lady, she was tragically killed in a bus accident last July, a year ago, and just amazing the vacuum that she left. But several years ago, about 12 years ago, we met her, and she had quite a vision, and so she went to a place called Ravello. And Ravello at that time was really noted to be Satan's sacred cow. It was the darkest, most evil place I have ever driven through. And for several years when we would drive through, I was very tentative of even looking to my right or my left to look out the window, because it was just like, if you stop in this town, they're going to eat you. They're just going to tear you apart, especially being an evangelical, a Christian. And so she came there. We had some missionaries that had attempted to go there and start a church, but they, one couple, for example, when they came, his wife would go to the street to buy bread, and the people on the street wouldn't sell her bread. They wouldn't sell her anything. And when she went away, the next person, anybody else came along, there was lots of bread, but they wouldn't sell it to her. And basically, they starved them out of the town. But Adelia came along, and she began to go to the little central area in the town. They call it the plaza. It's like a little park. And she would go there and tell children's stories. And the mothers would come and listen. And some of the children got saved. And one day, the town clerk, a lady, was walking by, and she heard the message, and she got saved. And things started to change a little bit. Well, we would drive through there on many occasions to go to other places with the radios. And finally, one day, they approached Adelia and said, "How come the gringos come through here and take their radios every place else, but they don't bring them to us?" And so she asked why we didn't stop there, and we said, well, we only go where we're invited. And we do. We go where we're invited. And so she told them that, and they said, well, we're going to invite them. What do we have to do? And so we asked that they would get a list of the families, the names of the families that wanted a radio. And in 1 week, Adelia got back to Greg and said, I've got a list of 550 names. Well, I was planning to leave with my team 4 weeks after that came on, and I already had 1,300 radios and 10 people to carry them, which is really puts our bags overweight. It's a lot of stuff. And so I contacted Galcom and I said, is there any chance that we could get more radios? They usually like to have 3 months notice to work those into their orders. And they said, we'll work Saturdays and Sundays if we have to, because I told them about Ravello and how dark and just how satanic it had been. And here's our opportunity, the door's open. And so they made me another 500 radios. And the day I put the order into Galcom, I also sent an email out saying, I need 5 more people to help carry these radios to Bolivia. And that night I sent the email out, and in the morning I had 6 responses. And one person eventually couldn't come because of work commitments. But the Lord provided those 5 people and the 500 radios. And so that trip we took, there were 15 of us, we took 1,800 radios to Bolivia. That was the biggest trip, or the biggest number of radios that we've taken in. So we did distribute, the day we stopped in Ravello, we actually distributed 726 radios. That's the most we've ever put out in one place. And most of those people came from within the main general area around Ravello. It's a huge agricultural valley located about 11,000 feet in the mountains. It's a beautiful valley and lush with potatoes and corn and beans and all kinds of stuff. And so Adelia actually began to preach and teach in Ravello after that, and pretty soon she had the desire to build this church, and a church in England actually sent money over to help finance the building of this church. And so she wanted the church built big enough that they could have like 100 or more people. The church she built would be similar to the size of this right here. And so over the years, over the next 2 or 3 years, she was talking about all the children in Ravello who were just almost all homeless because the parents were working in the fields, and these children were just running rapid. And so we suggested that she contact Compassion and get a compassion program going where she could minister to these children and through the church. And so mentioning that to Adelia was just, that's all she needed. And so she contacted Compassion International, and today, to my knowledge, she has the only compassion program that's not in an urban area. Most compassion programs are in the cities or the larger metropolitan areas. Hers is out in the middle of nowhere. And she has over 700 children that are registered in that program today. Now, when Adelia was there, she had vision. She wanted to take the program, not use half the church for the program, but have a building where there were rooms for these children to come and a place where they could keep their little supplies and so on and so forth. And so she did. She, over a couple of years, she had a building built. And it was interesting because now the men of the town are coming and volunteering to help lay the bricks and build the building. You know, the transition was amazing from the time we first went through where it was so dark and evil to where it is today. And then when we would go there, different people from the team sponsored children from the Compassion Project in Ravello. And so when we would go there, we wanted to go visit the children. What did we do? We walked through the streets of Ravello, and people were following us, and it's just been a whole change. Well, when Adelia died in the bus accident last July, it was like, what's going to happen? So we went back this time, and we found that the young people that she had discipled coming up through the Compassion Program are now in their early 20s, and she had discipled them to the point where they could take over from her. It was almost like she had a premonition that she's not going to be here for too long and needs somebody. And so Cassiano, the young man in the orange jacket, he's kind of like the program director. The young man on the right, I can't remember his name today, but he's the director. These were two young men that came up through the Compassion Program. Somebody sponsored them through Compassion, but Adelia discipled them. And Cassiano shared his testimony, and he said that Adelia taught us to do everything that we had to do in serving the Lord to make sure this program kept going, to make sure the work of the Lord kept going. That's how she taught us. And so now this program, when we were there, they've already started another phase of the building that Adelia had planned years ago, and now they're doing the same. They're just going on planning with the same plan. It's really, really so amazing, just utterly amazing. And so to come back home and tell people back here about how the program is still going, even though Adelia's not there, it's almost like she just said, I've got to step out and answer the phone. You guys keep working while, I'm just going to answer the phone. It's almost like she's still there. But no, she's in eternity. So it's pretty amazing. And so, Mac, what happened here?
The girl in the red, well, both of them have red, but on my left and right, those are the tutors of my two children. I sponsor 3 children. The oldest fellow lives outside of Cochabamba, and he would be 19. And The little girl is Maria Isabel, and Limbert is the little boy. And when I got the first picture of Limbert, I could see in the corner of the picture, there's a brown-colored door, and I knew he was from Ravello. And when I had a booklet of a little boy, but I wanted a boy from Ravello. So I gave it to a friend of mine, and he sponsored the little boy who was in Bolivia. And I called Compassion in Ontario, and I shared with that lady how I'd been to the Compassion Center and what you see. And what you see is a mom or a dad, but you see them come with their children and a tutor. And then next thing you'll see is tears running down that mom's face because someone's interested in that little boy or that little girl. And I shared that with this lady, and I said to Alex, I said, I think I made her day. And so that's how I got Limbert. And then I was over to Alex's, and I turned 62 last September, and I said, I wanted a little girl. And so Maria Isabel. And so I got to meet them both, and you get to talk to them. My wife, if you know where there's more sheep, she needs more sheep for more wool. She knits. She needs liquid cool knitting needles. She knits fast. Anyway, I explained to Maria the scarf that my wife knit. My wife prayed while she knit that scarf for her. But Limbert, he got a sweater the other year. So you have a chance to make an impact in those little boys and those little girls' lives. Are they going to be the next Billy Graham? Nope. That's not their goal. You get to make an impact in their life, and when you get to see them, then, you know, their mums and dads can't fathom the fact that you're interested. But when you tell them, I pray for your little boy and your little girl on a regular basis. And even those tutors, they're so thankful because I've heard them say, you don't realize the impact you can have on their life. And they just upped the cost of sponsoring a child, and I think it went from $41 to $46 or $47. But there's a little girl running around here having the time of her life. In Canada, how much will it cost to get her to adulthood? And as parents, now I have a grandson, how much is it going to cost? But I get the chance to make an impact on a little boy and a little girl's life, actually 3 of them. And it's a privilege. Yeah. And like I said, I can say, well, are they going to university? Are they going to become doctors or lawyers? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But I can have an impact. I can choose to be involved. And hey, anytime I make an investment with an RRSP or at the bank, I never win. Someone else does. But when I invest in something with the Lord, I never lose because I'm not the one that controls it. And so if that little boy or girl, they grow up and they serve Jesus all their days, it's a win-win for me. So I'm not going to tell you to do it. That's not for me. If you choose to support a little boy or a little girl or do something, you'll never... I look at it this way. Anytime I've done anything for missions, and I have it come automatic debit out of my bank account. I work in the woods. I get paid by what I produce. And there's weeks I don't work. Never once. Has there not been money in that Skitter account? Never once. Has there been food on my table?
Yeah.
Not once. If you live where Alex does, you'll see you have a little dog. And I used to have, my daughter had a bigger dog. There's never been once that we couldn't buy dog food for him. God's faithful. He didn't say, you decided to follow me, okay, I'll see you when you get to eternity. Doesn't work that way. But never once, not once, in the most, like I've seen be 12 weeks before you get back to work. Not once was there not food on my table. Not once. So, can I trust God with something like that? Sure I can. So I guess, if you're going to live by faith, and you're going to trust God, I'll tell you, it's not for the faint of heart. But I'm not counting on anything from the government. Not that the government's bad, but their programs aren't going to help me. But Jesus will.
So this was the welcome from the Compassion People. If you can read it, it says, "Welcome, dear sponsors." So it was in English, and they had them all standing there, and it was really neat. And there's Lily putting on one of their sponsored child. She made a jacket or bought a jacket for them and is making sure it fits. So and there's Alex with some of his and Judy's children. Another one. You had what, 7?
Yeah.
So they had 7 children. And there's Max with his children and families. And then we did some games. This is the only picture I'm showing, but there were a few other things that happened. But this was a tug of war, but you can see why we lost, because how few were on the top end there, and then all the ladies and the children got in there, and they just pulled us right over the line. There's all of us with the children and their parents. Okay, so that would be picture Sucre. And then I'm just giving you a few, because that town or that city is about 9,500 feet above sea level. So even there, the air is like a lot different than it is down here and where we are. You just feel a little short of breath up there, especially like when you first go, and like you climb a set of stairs and you feel like you're an old man, and just to take our suitcases up the stairs was, quite a thing. But after a few days, it gets better because you get used to it. That would be Hector's youngest son. And there's a picture of us with Hector. Alex is taking the picture, so. And then this is out in the countryside, so Alex and Mac and Heidi and Alicia's the other girl that was there. She was with Greg and Lily for about 3 months. She's probably going back. She's gone back. Okay. Is it Indiana or Ohio? Indiana. And then Hector's wife there. So this was just before we gave out the radios, just waiting up there. And then this was a church. You could tell all of that.
This little church, Boquata, Mac and I went there with a team back in 2001, I think it was. And our team went there to help them with putting the roof on this little work. And this was the place that Greg and I were traveling to when we met the guy on the road. So you read in the Bible about Paul's experience on the road to Damascus. And then there's another experience about when disciples were on the road to Emmaus. So Greg and I had our experience on the road to Pukwata, and that's when we met the man that had the broken radio. And so Pukwata is kind of a central name, but we were able to stop back in and stop and visit here on our way through. We drove through here coming back to Sucre, and there were some ladies having a Bible study in the church when we arrived. And when it's an interesting thing, because in 2001 when we were there, that's how long ago is that? That's 21 years ago. And as we go in, one of the ladies is already asking us about somebody who was on that team 21 years ago. So they don't forget. And so it was kind of neat. Mac was able to share a nice little thought when he was there, when we were there, and encouraged them a lot about how we continue to pray for them, and they, of course, are praying for us these years later. And so it's the Church of New Canaan is the name of the church. And you can see at the top it says Union Cristiana Evangelico. That's originally was not a denomination, but it's now become more recognized as a denomination. But it would be very similar to our Baptistic doctrines and so on. It's just the union of Christian churches is what it stands for. So, yeah. So Pukwata will always have a dear. Bring back a lot of dear thoughts and memories in our lives.
So, after these, or on the way home for these three, I went to Santa Cruz and stopped at Etnos, which is the school that Mike Grant used to teach at, and so. I was there first 10 years ago, and then I was there again 7 years ago. So it always has a place in my heart and if I'm going as far as Bolivia, it doesn't make sense not to stop there. So, and so I got in touch with them through Mike Grant, and then Mike Grant said, "Go ahead and message him, and they'll be able to translate, because the director of the school there only speaks Spanish." So I sent him a message on Facebook, and he says, answers back in English and says, "We have a project for you." And then at the bottom he says, "Somebody else wrote this for me." So then I was in touch again with them, and then they said, "Okay, so we don't really have, a building project or anything for you, but we want you to teach some English." And it's like, well, how am I going to teach English? I thought, how am I going to teach English? I don't know any Spanish. So it's like, usually you have to know both languages in order to say, okay, so this word means that. But anyway, I said, well, we'll just see what the Lord has there. So I get there, and basically the two fellows in the back beside me, and then the girl below them, and the girl in the green sweater, they were the second-year students there. And then the girl in the red sweater and the couple in the back on the right there, they were missionaries from the States. So they were in just temporarily to help with the English course. And it's basically just practical English, so they did things. And so I said to Judy, who also was helping with the English there, and I think she was kind of directing the program, I said, what should I do after the first morning, or for the first morning. She says, well, why don't you go up to the apartment and I'll send some people up and then you can just talk to them. And so I waited and waited and waited, and nobody came. And she had us come down to lunch. So at lunch I said, nobody came, but the students were there, and one of them says, well, we need if we did something that, that the men like. He says, because all we're doing is cooking, and I don't like cooking. So anyway, so we said, well, let's go over. And Hector was there with me too. And he knows a little bit of English. So we said, we'll go and talk to Willie, who's the director there, and see if there's something we can do down at the shop. So yes, Ramon was building something, and he needed some stuff welded. So we went down to the shop, and so I taught them how to weld, and Hector helped too. And we did this project, and I talked to them in English, and we could pretty well, with the little bit of English that they knew, could talk to them and converse back and forth. So that was the English teaching. And so there's the welding. Basically, if you look sort of the middle right, there's an upright post. And that's how they make posts. It's just made out of steel rods and then zigzag steel rods. And that's how they support the buildings down there. They don't have to support snow loads, so it's, it's plenty strong enough for what they do. And there's Alex. This is the one that doesn't like cooking. And I had to try and explain to him what welding should sound like. And the nearest thing I've always heard is that welding should sound like fried chicken. But I had to say, but you don't like cooking. So anyway, he was, but anyway, he really caught on well and did very well. The other fellow did some welding, and there's, I keep trying to forget, it's Raymond and Angel, Ramon. Anyway, that's his Spanish name, and so he's the one. He's like the maintenance man down there, and he was doing the project. So, okay, this little boy is special because he's the grandson of Willie, and his name is Nathaniel. So they wanted to make sure they had pictures of two Nathaniels together.
That's a before and after picture.
Okay, that would be Judy Gill. She's the one that was heading up the English program. She's one of the teachers down there, and this other lady is Margarita, and she's a teacher down there. I met her actually 10 years ago. She said she remembered me because she was a student at Etnos then. I didn't remember from there, but I met her 7 years ago out in Yorubicha, where she was doing missionary work out there. But she's had some health issues, so they have her back teaching the school programs. And this is the Ichu children. I've known them for 10 years. And this here has their father and mother too, but you can see how young they were then. And they were out in Yorubicha too. And we went out and did missionary work and built a roof on the side of their house. And they're learning the Guayara language or they were learning the Guayara language. I'm sure they know it well now. But what they do is they go out, and they're taught this when they're at Etnos, is you go out and learn the language, and you just absorb the language and learn how to speak and just converse with people before you start teaching the gospel to them, because you don't want to, if you start too early teaching the gospel and you don't use the right words, you can also give them misrepresentation just because you don't know what their words mean. And idioms and things like that you can only get by just living with people and kind of, learning the language. So it's very important to give the proper representation of the gospel. But anyway, these children, Christian is the oldest, and then Ninoska, and then Esteban. And you can see how small they are there. This is 2015, so they were a little bit bigger. And now that's them this time. But they were all very glad to see me, and it's been kind of neat to keep up these relationships that, started years ago. So anyway, I had them come and to the apartment where we were staying, and they had supper with me, and so Christian wanted to send a picture back to his mom. So anyway, so this ends the PowerPoint, except I took a picture of the moon in Bolivia and then the moon from our house 2 days later. So that's what that is. And we were also wanting to take up an offering for if anyone would like to help with radios. But I've also put Alex's email so that people that are watching this online could get in touch with him. It's a very, very, worthy cause, and I've been very happy to know Alex for the last almost 10 years. So anyway, so I don't know if you guys want to add anything or say anything more.
As many have seen me for the first time, I don't usually walk like this. This happened after a wonderful trip in the mountains the day before we came home, and I was visiting Hector with the rest of the crew here, and I wasn't paying attention, I guess, and not cautious. I fell on the stairs and did quite a bit of damage to my knee, and it's going to slow me down for a while. But I often said, why would this happen to me? And why couldn't it happen to me? It happens to people every day. God knew it was going to happen. So since I've been home, I had a wonderful experience at the hospital. When I got off the plane, my dear wife made sure I was going to the hospital right away, so I ended up in emergency, and they took me into the hospital. I was in a room that night and had surgery the next afternoon. But the main thing with me is I'm a talker, and so many people, even the first nurse that looked at me going into the emerge, said, how did you do that, and where did you do that? Well, that was a bad thing to ask me, because I told her I did it in Bolivia on a mission trip. Anyways, every doctor and every nurse that I'd met, and I'd met 4 Christian nurses, and the 2 days that I were there, it was amazing. But I had a chance to share with all these people the gospel every time about the radio and the ministry that we do there in the mountains. The surgeon, when I went into the surgery, the girl at the desk, when I went through there, she had the clipboard, and she called my name off, and she said your name, and they always ask you your age and stuff like that. I told them I'd just come out of my teenage years, so they kind of thought that was kind of funny too. But anyways, she said, I know you. I didn't know her from a hole in the head, but she was one of her relatives was on a mission trip with me several times, and Alex. So that was amazing. So anyway, the anesthesiast come out, and he started explaining to me what he was going to do. So we went into the room, and they put me on a stretcher there, or the bed, where they was going to do the surgery. So he said, oh, there's 2 ways we can do this. We can put you to sleep, and it's probably going to take you 3 hours or more to come up to sleep. You probably may be sick to your stomach. I said, well, what's the other way? He said, we'll freeze you. So I said, so what's this entitled? He said, well, you can be awake all the time. I said, fine. Anyway, I said, let's go with the freezing. So, and then while he was getting ready to freeze me, he said, what was you doing in Bolivia? And I said, thank you, Lord. So it was just me and him in there, so we had a long talk. So anyways, and then I said, just a minute before you stick that needle in me, am I going to feel your knife cut my leg, the doctor's knife? He said, no. He said, I saw your leg off with a saw. You won't feel anything. I said, thank you, Lord. So anyway, I said, we'll go that way. So he froze me up. So 4 nurses came in, I guess it was. One little gal was carrying a battery-operated drill. And I said, what are you going to do with that, my dear? And she said, you'll see. I said, thank you. I didn't think it was going to be for me. But anyway, she came in. So while we was waiting for the surgeons to come in, there was 2 surgeons. There was one surgeon, and he had an apprentice there that he was going to be working with. So anyways, the girls all asked me, what was you doing in Bolivia? I said, thank you, Lord. So the anesthesiast heard it all over again, same story. So I told these girls, 2 of those girls were Christian girls, and they admitted that right there in the operating room. So I thought it was a good thing. And the other 2 didn't comment. So then surgeons came in, and he explained to me what he's going to do. He said, oh, by the way, what was you doing in Bolivia? I said, thank you for asking. So the anesthesiast behind me, and the girls got laughing. She said, this is going to be our 4th time. But anyway, I was awake all the way through that surgery, because I said, I like to see what's going on, if you don't mind, because I'm a curious guy. I like to know what they're doing. So anyways, they did the surgery, and I seen everything, but he wouldn't, when he was cutting, he pulled a little blind up so I wouldn't see the cutting. I thought, he took away the best part. But anyway, I didn't see that. But I don't mind that. I'm not squeamish. I don't mind that. So anyways, the nice thing about it, the girl came in after the surgery was all over, and I thanked the surgeons for going, and I talked all the way through. I'm a talker. She wheeled in with this bed, and she said, am I too late? And the anesthesiast said, well, no, I don't think so. And the girl said, and she said, what did you ever do? She said, I see a child. You was in Bolivia. What was you doing in Bolivia? And the girls got laughing. Not right now. And I said, look, they want me out of here. I said, I never shut up all the time I was in there. So I said, I'll tell you the story on the way back. So anyways, I'm back there. Lo and behold, one of the girls in nurse there where I was going to be thawing out from the freezing, she was a Christian girl. So she asked me the same thing. What was you doing in Bolivia? It's wonderful. Everybody sees my leg. What was you doing in Bolivia? I don't care where they are, who they are. I tell them the story, and I'm full of stories. And you can tell I can tell you stories all day. But I just want to bring that to your attention. So honestly, I might be laid aside right now for a few weeks, but you know what? It's an opportunity. I always look for opportunities to tell people about Jesus. And this is a great opportunity to tell people about Jesus. Thank you for your attention.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Well, so I'm wondering, is the Quechua language into a written language?
Yes.
It's a written language, and is it being put into, translated into the Bible, or some of the books of the Bible?
Yes. There are actually 2 dialects of Quechua in Bolivia. And the one dialect that we are reaching out to, they have the entire Bible written in the Quechua language. They have hymns or songs, Christian songs, written in the Quechua language. We also have those, there's 100 of those now on that radio. So you got the radio, and you got the entire Bible, and you got 100 songs, and you got 15 hours of discipleship teaching, special teaching. And it's all in the Quechua language, and in the context of for example, the teaching would teach the life of Christ, how a Quechua man would identify with the life of Christ in that Quechua context. So it would be different than how we would relate to Christ in our daily lives, because it's all what we do here in the course of a day is much, much different than what they have there. So, yeah. So we do, that's really one of the benefits now with what started as a radio only, has now become a whole source of means whereby they can hear the gospel in their own heart language. And all of that is done by natural first language speakers. It's not done through a translation at all, nothing whatsoever.
So do they have churches along the mountain region of Quechua?
Well, most of the communities that we've gone to have not had churches, but there are churches now starting in places, because we've made 145 stops But we've had people come from over 1,800 communities to those 140 odd stops. The first trip we went on, 51 people came from 51 communities. Some of them walked 4 days to come and meet us. And when I tell you walking for 4 days, that's 4 days, that's not 4 daylight hours. That's all night as well. Some of them came up close to 100 kilometers. They walked through those mountains to come and get a radio. It's just been an out of this world experience in that sense. So the message of the gospel now has penetrated into so many little communities that there's, I don't know, we keep hearing about areas where we took radio 7, 8 years ago. Oh, now they've got a church there, and that church is starting to go out. They want to go and reach other people beyond where we were. In fact, now when we go into these communities, most of those communities are areas beyond, of course, where we were before. We don't go back to the same places. So it's quite a large rippling effect in the area. Now, Nate had mentioned about Victor, one of the evangelists, and another man that worked with us was Pedro. And so we have a likely close to 40 Quechua men, and we had Adelia. But we had Adelia and about 40 or 42 men who were visionaries in the Quechua world. So they would say, there's an area way over here someplace, and they don't have any gospel whatsoever. We need to go there with radios. And so they would take on going out there and promoting the radios to the town leaders and so on. And then they would get lists and bring those lists back to Greg and Hector, and then we developed the teams from here. We put it together. Okay, we can go into this area and work 4 different places. The next time we go with a team, we might be way over here working, but we'll be working with somebody else. And so, not only has the areas where the radios have gone expanded, but the number of local evangelistic Bolivian Quechua missionaries, guys and ladies who have a vision to go someplace, that's already expanded as well. You know, because when we started out, we had like 2 or 3 people that really had a vision. And but now these guys, Victor goes back into those same areas and does follow-up. So that is so important that they get the gospel. And now they've got somebody who's out to teach, and he can go in. They're Quechua speakers, so it's not a cross-cultural thing where we North Americans are going in and trying to teach them, and they're, you know, so it's a good thing. Mac had mentioned earlier there about a win-win situation, and this definitely is a win-win situation.
So how much area is there still to reach?
Oh.
Like, have you reached half or 3/4 of the Quechua people?
I would say we've got exposure now of the gospel to perhaps 40% of those isolated communities, because some of the communities are only 30, maybe 35 kilometers away from each other, but they've never visited one another, because life is so, it's just, you live every day, you work today to eat tomorrow, and so there's no reason to go to any place else. Some of those people have lived, you know, several hours from the city by truck. Okay, there's no buses, so they go by truck. Well, they've never had any need to go to the city, so they've never seen a city. If they do go to the city, they get really frightened because of all the cars and all the chaos that's going on around them. It's very dangerous for them. But sometimes somebody has to go to the city to register the birth of a child or something. So if Johnny is going to the city, he gets the word out. Do you need anything from the city? Do you need anything? So he goes and might spend 3 or 4 days in the city, and he'll gather up the things and bring them back. It's just so different than what we're used to here, you know. I mean, we don't think anything here, we're going to town twice a day. You know, we go in the morning, oh, I forgot to get this, so they go back in. I'm talking living in Heartland, coming to Woodstock, not necessarily Fredericton. But to go to a community, just in that example, if you lived in a place, let's say where Heartland is, and you had Woodstock as your kind of your local community, it may be years going before you go there a second or third time, because you don't need to. You just, you know, everything is in your own location. It's quite a different thing. But the gospel has changed a lot, the radio, because some of the programming is based on hygiene. So personal hygiene is very important. Mothers birthing children at home. It's, you know, using hot water to sterilize the knife to cut the umbilical cord. Okay, and I'm just talking, that's the way it happens. So socially, the people are learning socially, and they're learning a lot of things that has been very detrimental to Quechua lifestyles because of alcoholism and the use of coca, the drugs. Things like that has changed the culture in the communities now. Various leaders have told us, you know, we're so glad the radios came because now people are not fighting, people are not stealing. Alcohol isn't breaking up families anymore, you know, stuff like that, which is very encouraging. There's also programming on there to help agriculturally, teaching the farmers, rotate your crops. Don't plant potatoes in the same thing for 15 or 20 years. Rotate your crops. They've never heard of that. And now they're saying this is a good idea because after 5 years, instead of getting 2 potatoes per hill, I'm up to 5 or 6 potatoes per hill. That helps your production, you know. And so there's been a lot of things that socially has really helped the small communities. And the other thing is, when we give the lists of the names of the families and the communities to the radio station, they put that on the air, and they'll say, you know, hey, this morning we want to welcome all the families in Meductic, okay? The Joneses and the Smiths and the Keelers and the Finneys, you know, we want to welcome them all. Well, those people hear that and they think, man, they know we're out here now. And so socially, it's connected all of these little isolated communities to more where they understand, hey, we're not alone. We've got support, you know. And then, of course, with the gospel, you've got a new family. You've got the family of God, the Christians. And it's just changing the culture. It really is changing the Quechua world is what it's doing. So to say we've reached 40% of those people, that's about, because when we started out, they said there was about 3.5 to 4 million people that were beyond the sound of the gospel. And theoretically, when you think of 10 people, let's say 10 people per home for one radio, 57,000, that's 570,000 people. That's over 500,000 people. Potentially, the potential is that you have a radio in your home, but the family living on the left and right of you don't have a radio. But when you turn your radio on, guess what? They come and listen. They want to listen. So potentially, each radio could be reaching 30 people, 25 or 30 people. So now your 500,000 people becomes 1.5 million. And we're not calculating that. It's the local people who are saying that to us, that this radio is now reaching a lot of people. So if you take that 1.5 million over, that we've reached over 10 years, let's say, or 12 years, that sounds like, okay, now we've reduced the 4 million down to 2.5. But now you've got a population expansion in there that over 10 years is likely another 500,000 people. So, you know, you're gaining, but you're not gaining, you know, it's 3 steps forward, 1 back kind of thing. So, but it's still progression. And because of these little local churches, now there's opportunity for other people, the next generation, for example, who will hear the gospel and hear the gospel from their own people. Not, so it's just been a good thing. It's really been a good thing, yeah, and continues to be. So, and each radio is like $15, and you get the radio, you get the Bible, you get the songs, you get the concordance, or the teaching. It's just unheard of here, as far as what we can. So, yeah.
And the radios don't wear out?
No, there's some of the radios that are still going that we've had 12 years, 14 years ago. They're still going, and they don't look the same. they're well soiled and well, but one of the keys is that when we are giving them out, prior to giving them out, is, as Nate shared, Hector has about a 45 minute presentation to explain to the people, this is how the radio works, this and this and this and this, and he's very animated. He holds their attention like the crowd just keeps coming in towards him, when he's sharing the presentation. And that's key, because other people who received a radio they just were handed one, perhaps, or through another source, maybe through the radio station itself, or they can go and get they sometimes have radios there. Well, they don't have that explanation. They're always, it's like they can only operate at half, because they don't really understand all of how to operate it and get the most out of it. And so that's been very key, is the way Hector has designed this presentation to equip the people to understand that radio. And so, yeah, and they're smart people. They're not, they're smart people. They understand when the arrow points up and the arrow points down, they know there's a difference. They know which one is which. So it's not that they're, that they're totally ignorant as far as knowledge is concerned. Very smart people. Yeah.
Any other questions? No? So, we do have some envelopes here if people would like them. And we'll just take up a little offering if anyone wants to. And does anyone want an envelope? Do I? You need a debit machine, okay. Well, there's also that, the AJ Muir there, if you wanted to get in touch with Alex. Well, I guess you know him anyway, so. But anyway, if you just put your envelope number on, June, then you can